Good afternoon, everyone. It's always hard doing a panel right after lunch, but I'm glad that you guys are going to struggle through with us.
What's your content?
So I'm excited that we're going to do this topic. Being part of the intelligence community, we do really cool things, right? And we have this whole nation to protect. But the most important asset that we have in this community is our talent, is our people. And so that's why I'm glad that we're able to talk about this. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves and give your name, your title, where you work, and then why you're excited to be here.
Wonderful. I guess I'll start off. My name is Todd Heckman. I have the immense privilege to work in Google Public Sector. I lead our cyber defense and security operations group. So that's all things red teaming, proactive, pen testing, also managing SOCs for air-gapped and cleared environments. I came predominantly from the Fort as a background, data for, so that's my real passion. And I'm most excited today to honestly hear from you guys in the Q&A portion, because I think you have the most salient and relevant ideas, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Todd. I am Elizabeth Mashakas, and I am the Senior Vice President of Talent Acquisition at a company called BlueHalo, which was recently acquired by AV. I've got 35 years of talent acquisition, predominantly within space and defense technology. What I'm most excited about today is hopefully we give you even just one little nugget that you can take back and either bring to your recruiting teams, or if you're a recruiter, that you could just tweak, and it'll make a huge difference maybe in the outreach or the success of what you're doing.
And my name's Yolanda Reid. I am no longer at IBM. I just transitioned to the Mill Corporation. I'm a VP for cybersecurity. I spent 21 years at the Fort, so I just met my colleague from the past. And then I left the Fort and have been in industry focused on cybersecurity and emerging tech. So thank you for introducing each other.
And she has amazing shoes, guys. For accepting.
Thank you very much. When I saw them in December, I was like, I'm going to use those for panels. They're a good conversation starter. Okay, so our first question that I'm going to ask, the clear market has shifted very drastically. We're seeing candidates turn, we're seeing new professionals entering, we're seeing people leaving, and the talent for the highly cleared is going in very different places. How should organizations rethink hiring and training strategies to better match the talent to mission? So either one of you can start.
I'll give that one a go. So I think one of the important things is, obviously, if you're recruiting and you're working with, the Maryland customer, Virginia customer space, you have LCATs. You've got minimum requirements. Okay, we can't ignore that. However, we oftentimes get resumes sent to us, a lot of these folks coming out of the government, and they don't fit into any of our boxes, right? So unfortunately, again, 35 years in talent acquisition, I will tell you, many times I've just kind of looked at them and said, we put them in boxes, right? And I say, I don't know what to do with this person. So I'm just going to put this resume over here until somebody bothers me again and says, what have you done with this? I'm going to tell you, there's a time and a place to maybe take that leap of faith. Take that resume. If you see something and you don't know, it doesn't fit any of your job descriptions, send it to somebody else within the organization, somebody higher up. But sometimes it's also worth taking that leap of faith. So I'll tell you, I did it on my own team. I had somebody refer a candidate to me who was a retiree, just retired, was the chief of staff at the CIA, and was an attorney at the Department of Justice. And so, of course, I look at it and say, oh, it'd be great for a PM, right? And so I have one of my top recruiters reach out to this very high-level person. Recruiter comes back to me and says, the person thinks she might want to be talent acquisition. What? I didn't have an opening. But what an opportunity. This is a blue badge person who has contacts that recruiters would never have. So I said, let's be smart about this. And we opened up a contracting role brought this person in, they did bids and proposals recruiting, brought in work from the customer, the government customer that they left, because they could still walk the hallways. Your BD people can't walk those hallways, and we can as recruiters, but she can, and she still does. So she's now a permanent member of my team. I could teach her how to use an applicant tracking system, right? So this happened to be really specific to talent acquisition, but that applies in so many other cases. And that's my recommendation is, instead of putting everybody in our boxes like we do, if there's someone that is just that good, take that extra time, find someone else to share it with within the company, if it's a technology person or another PM, and see what ideas they might have.
No, I think it's a wonderful point. I would say to add to that, there's going to be a transition component when everyone takes a new job. So when we look at resumes, and obviously I see this, a lot of folks coming out from the service, quite honestly, where like they need some level of transposition between what they did and how it applies towards those same labor categories. Again, development changes, but if we look at the core components of it too, they might have the foundations of object-oriented programming, but maybe not the language itself. That's an open conversation to have when it comes to like technical mitigation. So I think we as hiring managers have flexibility to be like, no, you meet the intent of the category and we can develop and train you towards that end state and not see you in such binary terms.
I loved everything that you guys said. It made me think of, I was recently transitioning jobs, and a recruiter called me and said, Claude told me that you're going to be great for this job. I was like, what? AI told me? Because I had on paper none of the qualifications for what they were asking. It was an emerging tech. It was drone technologies, which I really only did one thing in drones. But Claude, actually AI tool, they said I would be able to take over and do this job very well. So it's very interesting. The different strategies of being creative and to rescope what this workforce can do. With that, I was just going to ask, what other strategies do you think would work best with keeping people engaged and growing the mission?
So, I guess if I look at that, that's the whole recruiting and retention, right? This is what we deal with every single day. The way I look at it is recruiting is the attraction part. That's what we do. And there's a lot of selling tools that we do within that to bring the right people in. But there's also what I call that attachment, right? Making people, I hate to use the word sticky, but we know that if you're dealing with those very, very, very highly cleared people, that it's about purpose. They're mission focused, right? It's purpose, but there's also growth components. One of the things that we do very well in the wooing is what are their hot buttons? Well, they love continuous learning, right? So let's give them really nice tuition reimbursement packages and all of that. But then think of what happens when somebody actually comes to work for you. Okay, whether you're a small or a big, mid-sized company, most of these individuals are working at the customer site. Okay, so what happens? How do they get sticky to you and your culture when the vast majority of their time is the customer? And it is the mission that matters. So there's a couple of things, okay? Some are cliche, but sometimes you got to bring the culture to the people, right? And people see my post and they're like, oh my God, another food truck, Elizabeth? Yeah, guess what? It matters. It matters to my employees that I am going to the pavilion and I'm showing them that we care, that I know that they're there. And there's a lot of other small things that we do, but we do things like, for the families. We do raffles all the time for weekend, activities and things just to have them feel that sense of connectivity to the company. But the bigger picture is, again, these are folks who are embedded into the customer site. So what do? It's about the training, right? We give them all these training dollars. We have a lot of people who I say are silently quitting, right? These are the ones who, if you think about the program life, it's 5 years. It's 5+ years in that Maryland customer space, right? It's a long time. So our jobs is we put them in an LCAT and we're good, right? Then we move on to the next. It's the PM's job to make sure that people are growing. But if you've ever been a PM, or do you know PMs? They're the most overworked. They're expected to do everything. And so PMs have staffing managers, okay? But staffing managers can do just so much. So even within talent acquisition, we have created some roles where we've got people who, so you know how you've got all those contingent hires just sitting? We've got people who constantly are touching them throughout that life cycle. We have not lost one person since we put these people in place. Actually, I take that back. We did lose one. The clearance crossover took entirely too long, if I'm being completely honest. But they're building relationships. So once they get into their seats, these people are still touching them, talking to them. So suggesting things like getting micro certifications, those quick fixes where people can do it and still do their jobs. The other thing that we do is try to, this growth thing, right? You can't always move people through LCATs as quickly as you would like to, right? But just because you put them in one doesn't mean they have to die in one. Okay, and that's the problem. So on my team, we've got people who are making sure, touching you, hey, are you good? Are you really good? And if the answer is no, then it's kind of like moving the chess pieces. Can we move you to another program at a higher LCAT? Can I work with your PM and your staffing manager and the customer, the prime or the customer, to get you into a different LCAT? Because I'd rather backfill the lower position, right? And then the other thing is that we do is we try to do what I'm going to call them rotations, but that's not really a real thing because we know our space, right? So what we do, if somebody has just a little bit of a gap, or there's a funding, dip, or they do have extra time, we say to them, what appeals to you? So I've had 2 recent cases where I've had fully cleared people who were technical, who helped with bids and proposals work, and they loved it. And not only did they do technical writing, they did a lot of the other piece. One of them opted and said, is it okay? Can I become a fully cleared BD person? Sure. But just giving these little opportunities. It wasn't this is your next job. It was like a 2-week assignment. Do you mind pitching in? And they feel like they're growing and they're being seen and they're being heard, versus those that I said that the quietly quitting, the silent quitting ones who resign, and that's it. So that's kind of where we go with this, kind of making that stickiness, if you will.
Oh, I love that. I mean, there are immutable realities to the missions that we serve, right? Being inside of a skiff 40 hours a week, right? These things are oftentimes non-negotiable. What is negotiable, what is at the, fingertips of every leader and administrator, is to go into those spaces, actively engage their people, right? Understand what they're doing, see it firsthand, recognize that, pay for their Sodexo lunch on their behalf, right? These things matter in fundamental ways. And I think that relationship starts with recruiting, honestly. Like I've had the experience where I felt like I really was not that wanted from a given company, and I had to impart my value to that person. That's kind of starting off on a really weird foot. So I think where you guys can lean in that space, it's only going to reap immense rewards.
Yeah, I think the stickiness and treating humans and remembering humans that they're human matters a lot. One thing I didn't give a lot of credit to at first was how my family feels. But my daughter is, about to graduate high school soon, and she had an opinion on my jobs. And that was very interesting. The jobs that put in effort to send some swag or do a family day, those are the ones that she was proud to walk around and wear their hats. And then I had some jobs that, she heard the culture was, she's like, I don't like how they talk to other individuals on the calls. And those she wasn't as proud of. And then the kids talked, right? And they actually kind of did a little recruiting amongst themselves about these companies are great and these are not. And so that's part of that, creating that stickiness that I've learned in this last phase through high school.
Well, you made me think of one more thing. So a couple of folks in this audience today worked with me in a prior company. And I found a letter that when I accepted, how you expect the letter to come to you? The letter went to my husband. And they sent a letter to my husband saying, we are thrilled that Elizabeth has chosen to be a part of this company. And I I have it because I'm like going to bring it to my new company and be like, we ought to do something like this. But I can't even tell you how much that resonated with him. And this company sent me a letter thanking me and saying how excited they were about you and your skills and your talents, and thanking me for, allowing, I'm sharing you. It's that work-life balance, right? And like I said, I found the note, and I was like, what a great touch that was. And it resonated. It really meant something. It was the first time my husband felt like he was included in the process.
And by the way, if any of this sounds superfluous, that's what we need to challenge internally. Right. Because frankly, if you look at it from the most, I would say, antiseptic, like Machiavellian sense of here's this effort I'm putting into a candidate. What do I really get? Well, hopefully we challenge that as human beings. But furthermore, we're looking at improved retention, lower risk on program, development of key staff, not losing them to competitors. That's the so what, right? At the end of the day, beyond the human element.
Good. I love all of it. I'm going to change topics just a little bit and talk about emerging tech, which is one of my favorite topics. Emerging technologies, AI, new advances in cyber, quantum is coming. All these threats are evolving faster than all the policies. And how do we make sure our cleared workforce isn't just keeping pace, but actually leading into the innovation of these areas?
That's awesome. By the way, I came for one reason, and it was this question apparently. So
Yay!
I'm really excited. I think first of all, we need to recognize that, quantum, AI, these things are disruptive by nature, right? So we should be at peace with that, okay? Disruptive means it's going to have massive consequence and benefit on either side, and it's up to us to reconcile that for our business and for our customers. To kind of think about it in a systematic approach, I would think about strategic conversations. And of course, how we do this depends upon the size of your organization, right? Large companies, they should be sitting down with their CTOs, right? And strategic leaders and saying, what does this mean for our internal business processes? i.e., how does my accounts payable do better with something like, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it? They also need to think about how these technologies will augment, supplant, replace, you name it. What's the impact for our service engagement, our customers? Because frankly, we can be inside of austere, clear domains that not yet had accreditation for these technologies, which means the alligator is a little bit further from the boat when it comes to how do we adopt technologies for our people. That just means we have more time. It doesn't mean it's not coming. So I would encourage folks to see it in that kind of two-dimensional sense between the internal and the external. Next piece goes when we talk about people and staff, that's where it needs to filter down to specific tech leads and managers to talk about those technologies as a consequence for a given skill and domain. Case in point, right? If you're an incident responder, you're going to be using these technologies differently than someone who is a developer, right? If anything, right, the disruption is going to be more impactful in something that it can take advantage of code generation. So again, it needs to start with a high-level strategy, internal, external. Once we kind of filter that out, we need technical leads to drive that vision. And by the way, we shouldn't be afraid of this, guys, because the sooner we can be proactive and get ahead of it, the stronger we will be. This is one of those, I think, really pivotal moments in the market that if people kind of say, I'm going to wait until someone tells me what to do with it, the opportunity landscape will have passed you, frankly. So I really want folks to be proactive in that space, but I'd love to get into more details if you guys have follow-on questions.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they probably will. We could save it. But I don't want anyone to be afraid of technology. Technology can be a great opportunity. That's what other nations are looking at it to be. So we should as well in our cleared workforce.
Yeah. And frankly, the opportunity landscape, and I'm trying to speak to maybe an assumption of the types of folks and talent that we have here now. There's immense opportunity in this space. Like, AI, we talk about it as a monolithic construct, right? It's not, right? It's the actual large language models themselves. It's the IT around that. It's all the core services that you do each and every day. I'll give you an example, right? So we have a red team that we maintain. So we kind of did a bake-off between our top, red teamers and actually using some, really focused AI tools for the topic of pen testing. And we did a bake-off. And guess what? The human being still won. That's great, right? So we kind of answered one little piece of a question for now. Now, ask me in 6 months because it might change there too. Now, does that mean the relevancy of that person is unilateral and is done forever. No, it means that we take the same amount of people, but we have a higher expectation on what they perform. We also think about the underlying infrastructure surrounding these large language models, right? Like at the end of the day, I mean, guys, this stuff is running on A200s at the end of the day, right? So the same person who's doing a hardware deployment on a traditional tech stack, they can become, a deployment AI engineer tomorrow, right? It's really just the components. It's going to be the packages that they serve. So I really want folks to think creatively of like, what do I do for core infrastructure? What do I do to secure IT? I'm still going to do it tomorrow, although, AI is going to be another application I support. So again, I want us to be wary of the future, but also realize that like, no, we still have a place inside of this.
Yep, we absolutely do.
Action.
We were having some side conversations before we came up here. And then I was asking, what should the future look like? And I think you'll be intrigued by some of the answers. I think that would be a great conversation for a Q&A. So how should we plan for our future?
Well, so, future-proofing the workforce. There is no magic wand. I had the opportunity yesterday. I have the pleasure of sitting on the board for ClearanceJobs, and we did an ideation meeting yesterday. And one of the last questions they asked was, if you had the magic wand, what would you do? And so, I jumped to the obvious. I said, if we could just get policies so that we could have the reciprocity in the clearances, right? Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? It would be great, but it wouldn't fix the problems, right? It would make it easier, but it doesn't fix the problems. We still have the LCATs. We still have the minimum qualifications in LCATs that we have to deal with, right? So thought about this, and now that I got a do-over with my magic wand, I had to write this down because anybody who knows me knows that when I turn off the lights at night, my brain goes into overdrive, so I have to actually write it down. So I have decided that if anyone from ClearanceJobs who has influence on policy, that we need to work and establish a national security talent innovation lab, okay, or a hub. Now, I've thought about this, okay, now I'm not sure it's got merit because I did this at like 2 o'clock in the morning. What does that mean? This needs to be from within the government. This has to be a government initiative, okay? It has to be centralized. We have to have it's a cross-agency hub. They have to focus on, it's my wish list, strategic workforce forecasting. Okay, they have to work on talent development. It can't just be us. Okay, and what does that mean? It's next-gen pipelining, and I love this one. How about some agile reskilling programs? How about that for us? Okay, and then I thought, why stop at talent development? Let's do technology integration, because we know that none of this is integrated in the government at all. Okay, and then my last one, I got really crazy. I said, how about a digital clearance acceleration process? Let's use this, let's pilot a rapid clearance vetting, using some of this identity verification emerging technology. Why not? So you want to future-proof the workforce? To me, that's, this is what makes adaptive, mission-ready talent. Okay, and that was just my wish list. Like I said, I had a magic wand, so that's what I came up with.
Infinite budget.
Apparently, we heard this funniest thing yesterday. Somebody, very retired admiral, who said that the government has three criteria, and I hope I get it right. Is it dumb? Is it expensive? Or is it impossible? Is it expensive? And is it dumb? And if the answer is yes, the government goes, yeah, we got to do that. It's perfect. So I don't think expensive matters. Okay. So this is my wish list. But I think, honestly, all joking aside, there's just so much we can do, and we all know that, right? There's just so much we can do. So magic wand, somebody please who has policy impacts. Let's talk about having the government take control of some of this in a way that is really cross-agency and can help us.
You want to add on to Nisha?
Yeah, I would say my first answer is going to be as a human being. I think it would be incredible if we had daycare for everybody.
Yes.
I think that'd be pretty badass. Wouldn't it be CIA daycare? Drop your kids off right at headquarters. I think it'd be amazing. No, towards I would say readiness for the future. I think what would be wonderful is kind of a two-pronged approach, and I love the innovation cell piece. First is like taking a really hard look at a lot of compliance controls that we have under impact level, FedRAMP, you name it. If we can basically make that quicker and easier to bring these emerging technologies into the spaces that we operate, that's going to be huge. The second piece is if we can have a funded playground, right? A massive space where small businesses, medium alike, can actually get access towards new language models, compute centers. So they're not really footing the bill themselves to say, okay, I'm a small business with software developers. I don't need to pay for all that GPU time, right? There are resources from the state that I can use to test my skills. And then to the other point, I can use those technologies in this space even sooner than before, right? Because ATOs have been shrunk. I think that would be a phenomenal thing because it's going to put technology in the right hands of the people that are going to be using it in the near term. So I would love that. And the daycares. So.
The only thing I will add is as we move into the future, I hope we keep our humanness and that we don't forget the lessons that we have learned from other emerging tech from the past. Right. And so, sometimes moving into the future and even with like AI implementation, we kind of forgot some of our security practices that have kept us protected. And so we don't want to forget our best practices. So I think it's time to hear from the audience and we can. Anyone like Garrett? Okay. And someone will run a mic around.
You got to answer that and put on speakerphone.
So I come from a 53-person organization. And so what are some of your recommendations, like your top tips for small businesses to do some of the things that you were talking about for retention and attraction? Or keeping people happy in some of the transition times. We can't afford to keep people on overhead while we can't bench people, So essentially, how can we feel bigger to our talent?
Well, I can tell you that I actually borrowed these ideas from the smaller companies. I had the great privilege of working in private equity. And when you do that, you acquire a whole lot of small companies. And the smartest thing that you can do is borrow with pride what things work. And in the Maryland space, I'm going to tell you, I have never seen some of the work better than those that are the smallest companies. So most of what we still do came from companies who really had to be very fiscally responsible, right? And I think the other thing is that, so, like I said, we do, during the really hot weather, we did a Kona ice truck. They're snow cones. It cost like $400. And we gave one to anyone at the pavilion who came out. It wasn't just our employees, but we weren't there like, yeah, come work at BlueHalo. That wasn't what we did. We were there just to support the community and support our employees. And I think that resonates more too. Think about that. When you're going somewhere and you're seeing a company who's investing in their people and cares about them, but not trying to be there and sell the hell out of somebody else. It's not what we do. Okay, but some of the things also is that the smaller you are, you have a little bit more agility. People can wear a lot more hats and do things that they're not so stovepiped, right? So this is where we got some of these ideas about the people in talent acquisition who would do the hand-holding of all the people with the contingents. They checked in not monthly, weekly. Has anything changed with what you're doing? And when you have a very small team, you have to figure out where it makes the best sense to put their time. You can keep recruiting and adding people to your contingent acceptance pipeline, but who's keeping them warm? And the answer is most of the time, no one. So rethink that, right? Maybe you do have somebody who is keeping those at any given time. Again, my company's not huge. On that side, we probably have 50 people sitting in a contingent offer. And like I said, honestly, before we put this person in place, we were lucky if we converted, maybe 20% of those. And now, like I said, this last go around, we did not lose one person, not one person. So it's really making sure you've got your resources aligned and have that flexibility, right? If now all of a sudden you've got all these open recs, well, now it's time to make sure they're focused back on the recruiting. But these same people care very deeply about how hard it was to find them. The last thing they want them to do is to sit in some black hole for 4 months. And it's not the hiring manager's responsibility then at that point either. So whose is it? Is it HR? Is it talent acquisition? Is it the hiring manager? It's the village, right? But when it comes down to it, no one's actually going to find the time unless you tell somebody, I need you to do this. So
to echo, when I was in that government, I had to take medical leave, extended medical leave, and then I got the opportunity to do just that high touch program for one of the agencies, and I had 32 people that I worked from, like my house. Well, from my bed at home, that I did the high touch program. All 32 people came into the agency, and that was through a 12 to 18 month clearance wait. And when they came in and I already went back to work, they all found me and said, thank you for calling. So it didn't take that much. I just made a calendar, and then I made my rounds, and I did that on medical leave. And so it's the human aspect. People want to work for good bosses and good people. And so, small businesses I found in our community have higher retention than some of the largest. When I made it to 2 years at IBM, people were like, wow, I can't believe you're still here. And I was like, oh my goodness. But when I worked in the small or the mid tiers, people were there 15, 20, and they were sad when I did transition. They're like, oh, but you're a part of the family. So a little bit goes a long ways. It doesn't have to be cost.
Yeah, authenticity and transparency, I think, is the greatest advantage that we have to bring to bear. Like, I think we work for places where they're like, we're like a family, but yeah, when the contract ends, you're gone in 7 days. That's a weird family, if you ask me, right? So, but getting back to points of authenticity, hey, here's our respective business model. Here's the decisions we have to make. Here's why that person had to go. Here's the investment we're making in you. Giving people a sense of agency through informed and clear communications, they respect that wholly, right? And a Chili's gift card is not going to offset, duplicity, right, or obfuscation. So I think the best thing you can do for your people is just to continue, which I'm sure you're doing, which is being clear, direct, honest, and show them you're an advocate, right? Like, no company can compete with that.
Yeah, and I was going to add one more thing. So with the smaller, again, you can't carry bench, okay? And even with some of the largest companies I've been with, you can't carry bench. It hurts more when you're smaller, right? But so that's where in some of the companies where I was private equity and it was small and every single head really matters. Every head matters no matter where you're at. Every person matters. I really got very creative, and I would say to the hiring managers, how soon before a billet's going to kick out that we can move this person? Help me to understand that. Well, I don't know. It might be 2 months. Okay, so people who in this room who know me know that I would then go around relentlessly and say, who has IRAD? Is there any IRAD? Do you need some technical support? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? I'm like, are you talking to the business unit over here? Because I think you're doing the same technology and you're dying on the vine over here, and we've got somebody who has at least 2 months, on. So can we do an IWO or an IWA process? And as long as it's within that person's well-being for their clearance, right? You'd be amazed at how much opportunity you have to do some of these, get them that smaller work. I said, getting somebody doing bids and proposals work. They have the clearance. They can sit behind, they can be in the skiff and do the work. And who knows it better than the people doing the technical work, right? And we don't ever stop to think about that. But there are things that you can do when you have somebody who is going to go on to that, I don't have work. Well, the only time you don't retain them is if you've lost the contract and it's work that you just don't have anywhere else in the company, and you're not going to. That's not fair to them, right? But outside of that, I would say look for IRAD, look for any type of work where they can do short-term, couple weeks, technical support, bids and proposals, working in that. There's different options that we don't stop to think about.
Can I ask you a question to go back on her question? As a company that doesn't have the luxury to have an office here in the DC area, how would you recommend keeping the culture, I guess is the best way to say it, for someone, like we're based out of Florida. I have headcount here in DC. I can't always be here in DC. What would you recommend to kind of combat that, especially when it comes to attrition and stuff like that?
Well, so I'm full of ideas. One of the thoughts that, again, I borrow with pride and I do it all the time. Larger companies can sometimes, when they're really smart, either through marketing and communications, they carve out a role and it's called an engagement and culture manager. Okay, and again, smaller companies don't have that luxury, but it's important. I can guarantee you at every worksite location, you've got somebody who is that company's proverbial cheerleader. Okay, almost give them work however you can, if it's Marcom, with the program, with the division sector, whatever that is, who owns the DC area, and say, can we carve out this much budget and give it to this person? They can help do some culture things that are local, whether that's bringing in Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, whether it's bringing in coffee, donuts. But there are things that you can do. If you've got those people who just have that passion, then you kind of give them that, they say everybody likes the badges or the stickers or the coins. Here, this is your badge. You are our culture manager for this space. And here, it's not a lot, but it's $500. And the business will start turning over a whole lot more money when they find out that, again, I call it that stickiness, that people are like, this is a great place. They do care. It far outweighs the cost of having to backfill or keeping a position open. And I even can get Marcom to give me money now too, because they understand the importance of that. So sometimes you just have to demonstrate, ask for a little, and then show a more significant return. And then typically they'll be like, oh, great, that worked. We gave you, 500? Here's 1,000 for the next time. And you just keep building off of that. But that's what I would recommend. Try to find those people who really already are the champions. And, they'll find 2 hours. They'll find 2 hours to set something up, even monthly.
Yeah, we can franchise culture, frankly, and we should, right? Because it makes it more resilient. It makes it realistic. So I think having that champion represented in different spaces is super important. We do it all the time when it comes to like a team lead within a given contract, right? You might have a contract, in Chantilly, even though you're based in Tampa. Well, there's of the three, folks you've got there's probably one that stands out that does more updates, engagement. Add that as an addition, duties as assigned. And I would say my recommendation is send them a graphics card, send everybody one, say, and we're doing, corporate gaming nights on Thursdays, who can make it too. So I think, connectedness and proximity, it can benefit each other, but you guys can think of creative ways to find the passions of the team and then make an MBA from it.
I think post-COVID, it's a little easier to go and find ideas because a lot of people had to figure that out, whether they were big or small. They figure that out. So I know that I did a plant night at my house, and we had 6 locations, and then we had a lot of people outside of those 6 locations, and so we did it virtually online. Companies made a business to be able to sell for virtual events, and so those are some options. And my daughter waters my cacti every month, and that was in 2020, and it's still here. So I think there's a lot of ideas. You just need to have the willingness.
We haven't heard any hard cutting questions yet.
So one of the things I was thinking about is how do you manage up with wanting highly skilled, highly cleared talent, maintaining that talent workforce? What are some things that maybe you do to keep your management in the know and understand the importance and understand the hiring timelines, why it's taking so long, explain those whys, all those things. I think that's an important piece of being able to do all the things that, to make people feel welcome. It's really important to have that top-down support. So are there ways that you've gone about to get that?
I mean, definitely. I can speak on behalf of most of us too. We're not smarter than the managers that we lead necessarily. We've just been put in a position of responsibility. And so I give that as a preamble to say that the same information, the same constraints, excuse me, that are guiding my decision and rationale, I need to share with those managers as well. It's going to get them leveraged buy-in. They'll understand why this thing, though it may be arbitrary, is a constraint. There should be very few mysteries and only secrets in the worlds that we operate in, right? So whether if it's an onboarding process or pay equity, there should be no taboo questions we've got with people. And I think that is like a huge difference that it makes in the cultures that we enshrine. Because nobody finds out that there's like a little bit of a weird agenda going on. Or they say, no, the clearance crossover took 6 weeks and it just is what it is.
I would also say, information is power, right? So we are entrusted with that process, and the hiring managers want to know, the managing up, why can't you do this faster? Or, whatever their questions may be. So some companies have tools like a talent neuron or something like that, if you have it in your company, where you can put your job in and it spits out and says, this is exactly how many candidates in this area that you're looking for have this skill set. Okay, and sometimes it's like 3. I kid you not. Or it says, do you know that the market for this is $325,000 right now? And your LCAT is 175. Okay, so these are why I'm having a hard time filling your position. But the other thing I jokingly tell people, and it's not, is the Chat GPT. Use it. Say, how many software engineers that do blah, 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 blah are there in, Chantilly, Virginia? It's going to come back and tell you. And then you can go back and ask it another question. And it keeps, So you go back to your hiring manager and said, okay, look, I used artificial intelligence and here's where we're at with this. So let's talk this through. I mean, I do tell my team, use whatever is available because knowledge is power. They know it. They do know that. They know how hard it is. But when they see it, sometimes you can say, okay, look, if you have a product like Talent Neuron, you can do things like, if I took this out, look, it went from being a difficulty of a 10 to a 7. 7 means I got a chance, right? So can we do that, hiring manager? Can you give me 2 weeks to see if I can do this? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes, no, that doesn't meet the minimum quals. No, it has to be this. And then, again, but I always say to my team, knowledge is power. Bring the knowledge to your hiring manager so they can see what you are working in.
I think it's great because about 5 years ago, I had a quantum team, and I mean, they were quite elitist, and they were like, oh, I can't hire that person because while they studied quantum, they didn't have this, and the team went for a very long time without hiring and complained about being stressed out. And I didn't have ChatGPT then, right? And I had to go out to the universities, and I was like, hey, this is what they're asking for. How many people out of that did quantum technologies at that time are you graduating? And the answer was 0. And so I had to use that data and form relationships. But data, we have access to so much data now that it does open people's eyes. And I end up, in that case, hiring some mechanical engineers, which weren't quantum physicists, but were able to do the capabilities that they needed. And so, but it was only after I gave them data, what they really wanted didn't exist. Okay.
Yeah, I was just, I had a question, like from a recruiter's perspective, like when sourcing talent, and like communicating with the hiring manager, do you have any tips for like how a recruiter could best understand like the job that they're trying to source for? Because I know like there's a lot of technical skills obviously like listed in it, and like I'm actually like a former software engineer like 3 or 4 months ago coming into recruiting. So like from the other side, a lot of times you just see job descriptions, they'll just say like AI, ML needed, but obviously like that's really high level view. Like you could like integrate AI into an existing business process versus like training an AI model. So like I feel like the recruiter, it's valuable for them to know what they're sourcing for too. So I didn't know if you had any tips as a recruiter, like talking to hiring managers, trying to get better information about like the job that they're trying to hire for.
I guess maybe I'll ask from a hiring manager's perspective, and then we'll hear from the recruiters one there too. I think the biggest gains we've had is from the hiring manager side too. We provide some amazing pre-screening qualifications and questions, because again, right, CVs, are what they are, and position recs were often limited by word counts. So I think that's the first part of it. The second is we need to equip the recruiting team with very practical day in a life scenarios. Here's the type of work that you'll be doing. Because the recruiters don't have to understand the complexities of that, but the right candidate will say like, okay, yeah, so I'm doing GPU array installs, right? And I'm doing inside of this. Okay, cool, I get it, right? And I think that resonates a lot more with people, though it may be canned. Last thing I'll say too is like, and of course it varies by policy and company too. We do something at Google called champions calls, right? So that's where a recruiter might say, hey, listen, Todd, we have an amazing candidate. They want to learn more about the position, the technical requirements. I get on the phone for 30 minutes, right? Worst case scenario, I lost, half of an hour. Best case, I really help find and refine talent, right? And I'm part of the story of why they want to be here. So yes, rely upon hiring managers.
Yeah, it pretty much sums it up, because the truth of the matter is I have recruited in my 35 years most positions I've never done, and I'm never going to do them. And I have had conversations with people where even after I've had, what are the 3 most important things? What are the absolute must-haves? What questions must I ask? I've walked out and had no idea what I was looking for. And I mean that in all sincerity. When I'm like, probably back in the day I didn't have Google and things like that to look it up. A good follow-up is there somebody else on the team that I can talk to? You come from a technical background, so you've got the advantage of being able to ask those be specific. Like, okay, that the AI, it's a very broad. What are the 3 top technologies that the most successful candidate needs to have? Oh, and is there somebody inside today who is the absolute ideal person, who's got that background that I should be looking to mirror that? But the other thing is not to be afraid to ask. Do not waste your time when you don't know what it is that you're looking for. Take the time and say, I heard you. I've had people who I swear their lips have moved. I've taken notes and I'm like, I have no idea what I just wrote down. And so I've asked, is there another person on the team that maybe I can spend a little bit more time with? And they'd say, yeah, oh my God, that's a great idea. Spend some time with this person. And I would say to them, I'm going to be super honest with you. I didn't understand one thing that your leader told me. So what is this and what is this and what is this? And they're like, oh my God, that's so easy. Bing, bing, bing. And I went, the light bulb. I'm like, oh my God, okay. And I feel dumb asking the question, but I understand it. Don't try to recruit for something that you don't feel like you fully have defined or you don't understand. Take that extra 5 minutes, have another conversation with somebody.
I would add, don't be afraid to ask the shadow. Most people will say yes. And so that just makes it easier for you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's up, Lou?
Todd.